Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. How are you on this lovely day? It is a lovely day outside, and I'm a little quieter than my usual day and a little bit I had a tough night last night. So my normal all the is not quite here this morning. Because there was some really big news in the US yesterday. Good morning, Joe. Good morning, Phil. So, good morning to my parents who are here. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. So, today's topic feels really big and really important, and it also feels a little bit tricky for me to talk about, and it's not something that I'm used to talking about on camera in public, so I'm gonna own that. And it's the idea that as a white person in America, I walk around with so much privilege. I do. And there were yesterday I had a great day, all sorts of amazing things happened. And at the end of my day, I went to check what was happening in the world at the end of it. And in the news, there were two really heartbreaking, sad, overwhelming situations. Good morning, Jennifer, that happened in the US with, so one of them is that George Floyd was arrested and then laid out down next to the police car, and cops kneeled on him, ultimately suffocating him. And that shouldn't happen. That is not okay. There is nothing about that is okay. And he was a black man. And there was no reason that he was being held in that way at that moment. And the other incident was here in New York in Central Park. A man was in the park and asked a woman to put her dog on the leash. And instead of doing that, she ended up calling 911 and saying that an African-American man was threatening her life. And he hadn't done anything. He was just standing there talking to her. And it feels important to talk about this to you because we have to talk to our kids about this. We have to talk to our kids about what's going on in the world, about what's going on in the country. And it is a weird conversation. It is a hard conversation because people who look like me, we don't have this conversation, right? But there is a privilege that comes with that, and there is a cost that comes with that, aka people's lives. They are dying, and Black Lives Matter. And I watched those videos and I heard those stories, and I did not have the thought of that could have been me. I did not have the thought that could have been my father. I did not have the thought that could have been the men closest to me in my life. It's not the reality that I live in, and that is privilege. And so if you walk in the world and you hear of these stories happening, and the first thought you have is not that could have been me, or that could have been the man who is closest to my life, or that could have been my child, that is not the thought that you had. That is privilege. And so, people want to say every life matters, and there's someone on my feed who's saying that true, and that is true. But that is not what this conversation is about. This conversation is about recognizing that there are people who don't believe that consciously and unconsciously, that in the world that we're in, it's not acting that way. We are not in the US right now. We are not acting that way. We are not treating people as if everybody matters. And that is why it is important to say that Black Lives Matter, because they do. And for those of us who aren't, it is important that we take a moment and look at what are the privileges that I have in my life because of the color of my skin. And as a parent, it is important that you take stock of that so you can model that and so that you can talk to your kids about that, because it needs to be a conversation. And I meant to look it up, but in all of my own feelings, I forgot to look up the stats of in Black families in the US, they have conversations about race every day, starting from the moment their child is born, because that is how their kids learn how to be safe in the world. As a white person, and yes, I'm Jewish, and that has another set of stories that are not about this conversation. As a person who seemingly passes as white in the world, who is white in this world, I don't remember talking about race as a kid. I have privilege that I don't have to think about every day if I don't choose to, because I just walk with it. So if you don't know what that means for you, that means I've never had somebody question whether I stole something in a store that I picked up to buy. Or if you walk into a store with your child and they're holding a toy, they're not going to be questioned as to whether they stole that toy or not. If they walked in with a juice box into a grocery store, they're not questioned whether they stole it or whether that was theirs. That's privilege. That's not what happens for everyone in this country, and that is a big deal to recognize. Jennifer says, what age is appropriate to begin that destruction? My kids seem to be colorblind as they have been exposed to many races from an early age. So here's the beautiful things about kids. They just see people, they see humans. But if we don't start talking about it when they just see people, we don't teach them how to maintain that, because this is a way in our world that we operate unconsciously. I would love to say, I don't see that. I'm colorblind. All is well. I have friends of every color, all of that stuff. But the truth is, unconsciously, we are conditioned to see and do and not even realize that we're doing it. The fact that I don't consciously have to think that wasn't my family member. When I see videos like yesterday's video, that's privilege. And so we have to start talking. So Jen, the answer to your question is start now. Start at every age. Because don't talk to your kids about children being murdered at a young age. That's not information they need. But knowing that there are differences, knowing that there is ways in the world that they have an advantage, a privilege, that's something that we can talk about them to anybody, that this is special, that they have this. Right? I think about all of the conversations that are happening with schools right now and the advantages that are in some places and not others. That's all part of this conversation. And so it doesn't have to be the full-blown expression that I'm having now. It doesn't have to be about the horrors if you have little kids, because hopefully you can have the conversation in a different way, but talking to them about the privileges they have, that it is special, that if they feel... So I grew up in a world. My world was that if something was wrong as a child, right? If I was lost, if I didn't know what to do, I could find a policeman and they would help me. Daylight, in the middle of the day, I still believe that if I need help, I can walk up to a policeman and they will help me. And that is privilege, because that is not what everyone believes. And so when you teach your child that walking up to a policeman, you know that they will help you, saying, like, that's really special, because that's not how everyone experiences the world. And so having conversations in small ways every day with your kids about the advantages they have, the privilege they walk with because of who they are, so that they can recognize that, and they can recognize when it's not there. Because one of the biggest things, and what I saw a lot of, is that we're not having the conversation. We, as in those of us who are not forced to be in it, those of us who didn't look at the videos yesterday and go, that could have been me. That could have been my dad, that could have been my brother, that could have been my son. We are not having the conversation. And as heartbreaking as it is, the truth is, Jen, other 3-year-old families have to, because at 3, their kids need to learn different. And what I will also say is this is not my area of expertise, and I know that there is a huge amount of research and information about how to talk to your kids and what to say to your kids and how to do that with grace. And I read a whole bunch of articles about that last night in preparing for this, because quite frankly, it feels really hard to have this conversation. It feels ungraceful, it feels clunky, it feels awkward. And the truth is, that's privilege. That is part of my privilege, because I am not well-versed in this conversation, because I haven't had to be. And so hopefully I am doing it with grace, and hopefully it is coming across the way I intended it to, as a reminder to parents, as a reminder to us as a culture, that we all have to be having this conversation. If we want to change what is happening in the world, and it needs to be changed, then we all have to talk about it. We all have to talk to our kids about the privilege that they walk in the world with, and we all have to recognize our own privilege even when it makes us uncomfortable. Does this make sense? Jen, it was a great question. Are there more questions? Are there more thoughts? Are there more things that I can share at this moment? Because I don't have the answers, but I know two things. I know one is we have to start talking about this in whatever way it is you can talk about it, you have to start talking to your kids about it. The privilege they have, the fear that is out there, the differences of how people see and experience the world, we have to talk about it. Number two, we have to recognize it in ourselves. We need to look at the way in the world in which I get to walk every day in privilege. I get to put on a mask every day when I go outside and feel safe doing that. It's not how everyone feels right now. Excuse me. I get to still believe that if I need help, I can walk up to a police officer and they will help me in the middle of the day. Not everyone gets that. And so Joe says, people need to be nice to one another. Yeah. People need to be nice to each other. Yes, that does include politics. It breaks my heart when I talk to friends who've had the conversations with their kids in a more difficult manner. Right. And so Jen, what I want you to get, what I think the point of like what really got to me is it is a privilege that we have to not have had that conversation yet. And that needs to change. Not because we don't walk in the world with that privilege, because that is, God, that is a gift. And I really hope that one day that is not a gift that I am just bestowed, but that we all have, that it gets to be a choice to have the conversation. But that means we have to take the step and make the choice and do have those conversations, even though we don't have to. Because it is a privilege to know that even if you don't talk to your kids about race, it will be okay. Because for some families, that is not true. And if they don't talk about it, it will create massive problems. So do the hard thing, the uncomfortable thing, the weird thing, the thing that you are not obligated to do, and talk to your kids. Talk to your kids about race. And talk to your kids that Black Lives Matter. And find resources out there that are gonna help you find the exact words, because I don't know what they are. I can tell you the ones I've used because that's the best I got. But it is heartbreaking and hard and important. Really, really, really important. Okay, so that is what I have for you today. Know that I am sending you love. Know that I am gonna be back singing and dancing tomorrow, because that is what we need to do, right? With all of the different things that break our hearts, it is important for us to go and touch it and talk about it and to keep going and to keep celebrating, because it's not one or the other. It's not just because hard, bad things happen, we stop celebrating. It's because hard, bad things happen that we have to keep celebrating. We have to live our lives with integrity, with openness, in big conversations, and with recognizing and enjoying all that we have in it. So please go do something that makes your heart happy, that helps your family, that fills your life, that makes the whole world a better place. And I will talk to you again tomorrow. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for having the conversation with your family. And I will talk to you tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. And if you found this helpful, if you found this useful, if you found this interesting, if you found this different, please share it. Please like and subscribe and follow and do all those things, but also please share it, because this is important that people know how to have these conversations and to have these conversations. All right? So with that, I send you lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of love, because we all need it right now. We all need it right now.